Monday. It's the new year. Many of you have gotten new equipment since the Black Friday shopping madness frenzy began, and hopefully a few of you found what you were looking for from Life Pro under your tree. I have been inundated with new members, lots of personal questions. Many of you are getting started using a vibration plate. So it doesn't matter how often I do this session. There are always new vibration plate users. So today I wanted to go over some basics of what is a machine, what are the types of movements that yours may offer, what is the best place to get started. And if you do have some specific goals that you're trying to accomplish this year, how to use your plate effectively in doing that. So I just want to check over on social here, make sure that everyone is seeing me. If you are joining me today, know if you can see and hear me, just drop me a comment in the feed so I know before I continue my ramblings. Let me see here. I've got a few of you here with me. We're about a 20-second delay getting over onto social media here. And I do see, yes, I am up and running. So perfect. Again, if you are joining me today, perhaps it's a refresher. It's also a very common time of year. Maybe you're not getting a new plate for the first time, but maybe you haven't been using it so regularly. So we're going to talk about consistency and just some basic tips on getting started, regardless of where physically you may be starting. So I'm going to go back to my little demo area behind me. I do want to invite some questions today. If you have something specific, you're dealing with a medical concern, you've given yourself a spook, maybe you've overdone it the first time, I will leave some healthy time at the end of this session for questions. Again, if someone joining me could let me know if you are seeing and hearing me okay on your end, and I'll get into the demo and the lecture learning side of this demonstration. I asked you if you were joining me today, especially for those of you dealing with mobility, poor range of motion, poor stability, to have a chair with you today. A bar height stool is ideal. There's no perfect height for a chair. Wait, mine is adjustable. I can see and hear you. Thanks very much, Shelly. Brenda, can I just stand on it or do I have to do exercise? Brenda, I'm going to go, you can just stand on it, but if you think the machine's going to, if the goals are weight loss, 60, 70 pounds, the machine's not going to do all the work for you. But many of my clients do use standing. That's one way that you can use it. And that is one of the variations I will go through today. Just standing on it, what setting, how long, where do I put my feet? There's a few things. And I think if you understand how the plate works, what the settings are about, and what you have control over, what you do on it to get the results you want are going to be a little bit easier to understand. But if you've got a condition or if you've got a goal and you're simply looking for a program or a number that is going to, you can just set it and forget it, it's really only going to take you part way through the equation. So I will leave some questions to the end here. I'm going to move over to my plate. Today I'm working on the Rumblex, and I've got a number of different models with me today because many of you are using different machines, but there's some common things between these plates. They are not all the same. They do not operate all the same. And depending on the model that you are using, there may be different types of movement. Hang on, I am totally blinding myself. My lights are a little too bright here on this side. So first and foremost, before we get into too many specifics about how do I do this, how do I accomplish that, I'm going to get started in a seated position. I'm going to be using oscillating movement for all of my training. The reason I use oscillating movement is it is the one movement that you all have in common with your plates. It is the most researched and most utilized. Hang on, I'm hitting my buttons wrong. Do not have a remote today. Oscillating is the teeter-totter, side to side, almost mimics walking movement. And if you are working with a Life Pro Rumblex series, it is the first movement. It's the side to side. You also have other combinations. So before we get too far into how the machine works, I want you thinking throughout this session, why are you using this plate? Why are you using a vibration machine? And there's three. I've been doing this almost 2 decades, and there's three very kind of common goals that I break this into. And the first one is symptom and recovery management. The reason I'm seated is this is the way a lot of people use the machine. It's also a good way to learn how your machine feels and become accustomed to it without bearing your entire body weight. If you are dealing with balance issues, stability concerns, you fatigue easily, you're dealing with pain and swelling, standing on the floor isn't always so pleasant, and we're doing it in an environment, that's what a machine is, that ramps up the effects of what you are doing. So starting seated is a good way to get a feel for it. Again, we'll get back to symptom management when we get into some of the things we're doing, but symptoms and recovery, you may be using it for fitness and or exercise. For those of you that have big plans for the new year, just standing on it is not going to get you across the finish line as quickly, perhaps, as maybe doing some squats or some lunges or some actual exercises. So we'll talk about that. And the last general and biggest reason I think most people are using machines is just to feel good, move better, do some relaxation and recovery. The machine is really good at some basic benefits of offering lymph and circulation increases. So sometimes people are using them just to move and feel better and get rid of their day. So the contraindications, there are contraindications, but they very much mimic the contraindications to exercise. Are you able to exercise? Do you need to modify or select certain types of exercises because you're dealing with something? All a vibration plate is an environment, and it's an environment that dramatically reduces exercises that you may be performing on the floor. It's very low impact. It increases the amount of benefits of doing those exercises on the floor. It also reduces the amount of time and effort that you need to put forth. So it is a little bit of a cheat, a little bit of a hack, but I don't like to coach that you can just stand there or sit there like I am today and you're going to get all these miracle benefits. If you keep doing the same thing, whether it's feel good or fitness, you're going to plateau with any exercise or any activity and just maintain over a period of time. So contraindications, really the big one I'm going to raise, and I will post contraindications in the recorded version after I have discussed this today. But contraindications are not absolute. They're not black and white. It's not like all of a sudden one day vibration machines came out and some guy came to the meeting with a list of appropriate people and not appropriate conditions. So like anything out there over time, over research, there's things that we have come to learn. Vibration plates have been researched in excess for 50 years, 5 decades. So again, a lot of the contraindications are more related to exercise, intensity of exercise, type of exercise. But we do know for many reasons that being active or exercising improves our health. A vibration plate just makes the exercise or the activity piece easier and more effective for you. So right now, if you are dealing with active clots, if you are at high risk of clotting, if you are dealing with myocarditis or a recent heart diagnosis, I would prefer that you use seated or have a discussion very first with your doctor to, it's not about whether a vibration plate is suitable or not, it's whether being active and increasing circulation is suitable. A vibration plate just happens to do more in less time. So have that discussion with your doctor. If they're not familiar with vibration plates, there's lots of information out there, but it is an environment that increases the effects of exercise. That's the simplest one-liner that I can give you. Other contraindications, you know what? If you've broken both of your legs yesterday, you probably shouldn't be using the vibration machine. A lot of it is common sense. And if you're dealing with a medical issue, a recent surgery or fracture, I don't want to say that you can't use a vibration machine, but you may need to modify what you are doing on it. If I broke my arms, sitting like this imposes no movement at all to my arms, so I could do something like this. If I hurt my left leg, I could still put my good leg on the machine. Maybe I like using it for circulation or restless leg. It really depends on where you're at in your recovery and your healing journey. An experienced vibration plate user like myself, therapist, doctor, someone that's using the plates commonly, we use these things for post-surgery and post-recovery, and very often have people on the plate the same day. But we understand how to modify and translate the exercises that you've probably already been prescribed, the stuff you're supposed to be doing at home. The machine just makes it easier and more effective in less time. So for those of you that have been listening to me ramble for just about 5 minutes, let's move to a variation. Maybe you're still scared, you're not ready to stand. I want to teach you a little bit more about the machines. We'll move on from contraindications to the most important point that I can teach you. If you remember anything today, it's one word, and it's called amplitude. Amplitude means control. Amplitude means intensity of how strong the movement of the machine feels to you. Now, in oscillating, so the movement we're working in right now, just like a teeter-totter, if you put your feet wider, you're going to feel a lot more movement. That's called increasing the amplitude. You're standing on a wider edge of the machine where there's more swing. Oscillating style machines have the most amount of movement at the outer edge. They have the least amount in the middle. For those of you that guessed that, thank you for following along. This means that you are always in control. So depending on you, how the machine feels is a unique experience to everyone. Maybe you're sensitive. Maybe you've got good tolerance. And it also depends on the exercise that you're doing. But if you're just getting a feel for it, I want you playing with this value, putting your feet close to the center, putting it wider, playing with the next point, which is my speeds. The slow speeds, so in combination with how wide you are, you can use any speed once you understand that lesson. Wider does not mean more benefit. I hear that from more medical people and trainers. No, it means more movement. It means more impact. And that really depends on you and the exercise you're doing at the time, as far as how much you need and how much you can tolerate. For the purposes of today's session, I want your feet, if we're seated, hip width apart. It's the most functional. It's typically better posture. But I want to add to the equation. We're going to lean over and we're going to add our elbows to our knees. And by doing this, we start becoming a part of the equation. The elbows connect to the knee bone. The knee bone connects, you get the equation. So you're going to start feeling movement because we're leaning sort of just slightly past our feet with our head. We're nice and straight from the elbows, shoulders, and to the knees. You're going to feel the movement more in the neck and the shoulders. For my ladies and anyone dealing with sensitivities in the neck and the shoulder, which is pretty much everybody who wears a bra, carries a purse, carries a child from one time and another, works on a computer, everybody deals with neck and shoulder tension. So this is a feel-good application. It's a good way to mix it up. But if you find that it's too much action, too intense, maybe you're dealing with degenerative neck disease or you've got sensitivities in the neck, bring your feet closer. Reduce the amplitude. You are always in control. If you want more action, you want more intensity, widen the foot placement and you'll feel the difference. While you're sitting in this position, feel free to do whatever feels comfortable. You're just adding stimulus, circulation, blood flow. Roll the shoulders, move your head, whatever kind of feels good. And any of these type of things, I'll get to time in more definitive terms here, but if you're just doing this to feel good, I don't know, a minute or two as you need, whenever you need. This isn't meant to be a 10, 15-minute session and you should expect to lose 50, 60 pounds. Not the way that it works. But for those of you that struggle with exercise, suffer and have symptoms throughout the day, or maybe you're spending some time sitting because you're recovering, these are all ways that you can use your machine to improve your day-to-day, improve your mobility, your lymph, your circulation, all the feel-good stuff. There's a million variations from here for those of you that are dealing with severe medical issues and you're seated for a reason. You can add anything you want. This, again, is just an environment. I love using a pull noodle. If you're dealing with neuropathy, you've got tension in the calves, spasticity, things like that. A pull noodle is a good way to get up into the arches, maybe into stretch the toes. Start some calf raises. You are only limited by your imagination and your range of motion. And if you have other tools around the house that you do while you're sitting on a couch or a chair that look like this, you can incorporate them into using it on your vibration plate. There are other sessions that myself, Amber, and Roseanne have done on seated use. And if you're looking for something more specific because you are limited, we can talk about that with questions and I can offer some links later. So let's resume. So first of all, the amplitude lesson. Before we stand on the machine, you are always in control. If it's too much action, bring the feet closer. If you want more action, bring the feet wider. Again, that's going to change depending on the exercise and your own personal tolerance. The speeds. Most of you have speeds or levels. The language of speed on a vibration machine is frequency, or how many times per second it is going through the rotation or the cycle of one movement. 99.9% percent of the machines out there, does not matter which model you have, does not matter which brand you are using, but we're speaking specifically to LifePro today. Unless you are investing thousands and thousands of dollars in medical grade equipment, the average vibration plate in the LifePro lineup goes 15 to 16 hertz. Now, to give you some variability, and I always talk in levels, I like you mixing up your speeds. Your body gets too used to any one thing if you're just doing the same speed all the time. The slower end, so most of you are dealing with a Rumblex. If you've got 60 speeds, the stuff under 20 is very choppy, very wobbly. If you're dealing with a Waver or you're dealing with a Mini, the new hex plates, a lot of those plates go 99. You've got about the same frequency. They're just broken into different speed values so you can customize and play around for your own tolerance with it. So I always recommend a mid to high speed unless you are doing something specifically for balance, and you have good balance now. I don't want my clients with Parkinson's or recent fractures using the slow speeds. They're choppy, they're wobbly, your body's got the most time to react. So I want you using a mid, even a high speed if it feels comfortable. But remember, you can always bring your feet closer if those speeds feel too scary or too strong when you get there. So I want you standing. For all my therapists out there, if you ever heard of the sit to stand, best exercise that you should incorporate into your vibration plate in your clinic. So my knees are slightly bent. Biggest next thing to remember after the amplitude is keep the knees bent. You can lock your legs, but you'll notice you're going to feel it all up in the head and the neck and the shoulders. You can hear it in my voice. And if you pair that with a really wide foot position, I know, ladies, that you can feel it all shaking on here and think something's happening because our skin is flapping back and forth. Bend the knees. It's about the muscles absorbing the movement. And I assure you, if you have head sensitivities, neck issues, by locking your legs, that's where you're directing all of the movement. We're very rigid, kind of like an A-frame. Bend the knees and let those natural shock absorbers kick in. Can I just stand on it? I had that question. You absolutely can. Just standing on it, you're bearing your weight. You're going to gain balance almost immediately within one use. Stability. You're going to feel energized. You might feel a little bit itchy, pins and needles. That's a common new user thing. As that circulation and lymph gets moving, especially if you've got sluggish lymph, you may notice intensity there. If you are dealing with symptoms that I haven't covered today or haven't talked about, and you're dealing with a medical condition, there's usually a correlation. Sometimes first-time user things can be heightened if you're dealing with certain conditions. So, for example, those dealing with POTS, I recommend taking an antihistamine. Some of you have a histamine response just because that lymph is so sluggish and there's toxicity stored in it. So itchiness is not uncommon. If the goal is more like fitness and exercise, the only difference is what you're doing on the plate. So for feel good, some basic exercise benefits, yes, you're going to accomplish the bone density, the strength, the balance. But if you want to lose 20, 30 pounds, if you want to increase range of motion, if you want to be able to get down on the ground and pick something up, maybe your grandchild, you need to push yourself. And the best number one exercise that you can learn to incorporate on your plate is a squat. What your squat looks like is really going to depend on you, your range of motion, your current conditioning. But it doesn't need to be a mean squat. Maybe you look something like this. Maybe you've got better range of motion and you're doing these types of exercises now. If you're not, this stool is the #1 safety tool to have when you're learning squats. What happens is sometimes you're so proud of yourself and you're getting so deep that you fatigue and you don't have enough to stand up and get yourself off the machine. You can just plop yourself back down. And that's a really good tool for my therapists and my trainers. If you're working with clients and you're pushing them, having a stool for fatigue, or even just, maybe you're working with some weights on the plate and the balance goes wonky. It's a great tool to have available. You'll notice that I'm not moving up and down. If you don't exercise regularly now and you don't do squats now, the technique needs to be worked on first. That just hold your pose statically. Make sure the knees are not passing the toes. That's one way the body cheats. And just go as low as you can. Try and keep a nice straight core, shoulders back. You can't see from this angle, but your shoulders should be in line with your ankles. Okay? And only go as low as your range of motion allows. Other fitness positions, you are only limited by your imagination. Again, this is an environment where I was just showing you a squat, but you can do lunges, you can do crunches, you can do push-ups. But again, if you're working with exercise positions, you've never worked with a trainer, you've never done these positions before, invest some time in learning good technique. The better your technique, the better your experience and the results are going to be on the plate. So biggest lesson so far, amplitude. Did I mention that? Have you forgotten yet? Speed. Try a mid-speed. This is not a treadmill. Everyone's got this mentality of starting slow. This leads me to my next big point, consistency and conservative. So start out conservative. Don't push yourself. If you're not active now, it doesn't seem like 10 minutes, a whole lot's going on, but there is. If you're dealing with chronic issues, you can use your machine multiple times throughout the day for maybe a minute or two just to boost energy. Sometimes less is more, especially if you're in a rebuilding and recovery mode. Hang on, I'm looking at my notes. So I've started seated, amplified, amplitude, speeds. These are all things that once you sort of understand the terms, whether it's a push-up, whether it's a squat, you can modify based for your own strengths, your own tolerances. A lot of my guys like in a push-up, for example, they like a wider hand placement. They're built differently than us ladies. So there's other push-up videos, there's core videos that go into detail. But once you understand that it's not one setting, it's not one set of exercises. It's really more about looking at if you're doing exercises now, try some of them on the plate. Just remember how to control the intensity and try a mid to high speed. I think you'll find starting out they're smoother, they're less choppy, and you will fatigue faster because you're getting more movements per second. If you find when you begin your standing exercises, I was going to explain why I have the ladder here. If you do deal with fatigue, poor mobility, part of what's nice about having a stool is giving yourself something to hang on to if you need stability. I've got a ladder. A lot of my families that I work with in my pediatric group have a ladder or a rail, a safety rail attached right to the wall. And it also depends on the size of plate. So I'm going to just talk very briefly about plate size, which plate is the best. So now that you kind of understand, the basics of using a machine, and I will get into a few more specifics, there's all kinds of different sizes and modes. When you're selecting a machine, today, of course, I'm using the Rumblex model, which has 3 different movements. I do coach primarily in oscillating because there's the most ways to customize. It's the most functional, and I find it's the most tolerated. The other is vertical. Vertical is much faster in speed and in frequency. They move faster, but they don't move as much. You don't get as much amplitude. So be careful. I see it all the time where people message me and say, oh, well, everybody knows that 40 hertz is the best speed for bone density. Well, who told you that? Some company selling machines? Probably. No, it's never one number. And in that In fact, bone density is about weight-bearing exercises. It's not just a number. So 40 hertz, I know right off the bat, that has nothing to do with oscillating. The best oscillating plate on the face of the earth goes about 35. 30 is the average. Life Pro, we're working at the 15, 16 range. I've seen evidence of bone density increases at 8 to 10 hertz. So it's a different type of movement. Vertical machines also tend to be louder because just the type of movement that they are. So you'll notice when you're using your pulsation mode, if you have a Rumblex, it's a little louder than oscillating. The other movement, which is more of a feature, there's not as much research on it, but many of you do enjoy using it, is lateral movement. Lateral is great if you're dealing with extreme head sensitivities. You know, you just want some lymph and some circulation. It's just another mode to try. You can combine these models or these movement styles. What I will say is more movements don't mean more benefits. You would do the same type of exercises in pulsation. You do the same type of exercises in lateral. It's just a different way to mix it up. But oscillating in the long run is the most adaptable for training purposes, different types of exercises, and it's also the most tolerated. So when you're selecting a plate, the biggest thing you have to keep in mind, just about why, same reason as why you're using it, is it's all about you. What are you using it for? Are you planning on moving it around 5 times a day? Do you have a dedicated space? Do you lack space? Very often, you know, we think that we're spending more money and we're getting the biggest and the fanciest model, so we're going to get the most benefit. Getting benefit is about you using it consistently. It doesn't matter how fancy your plate is. You're the one that's got to show up and use it. So the smaller models, this one is the hex plate. There's the mini, and then we get into the Rumblex models. The Rumblex models, or the Turbo, or the Hovert, any of the models that have more than one movement will also have more than one motor. Each movement style requires its own motor and housing to make the movements. So guess what? If you're getting a Rumblex model, they're going to be heavier. They're going to be bigger because they've got to have 3 motors. If you're looking at the mini or the hex plate that are just oscillating, they can be more compact. They can be lighter, and they tend to be better as a portable option if you are planning on moving it around or taking it with you from time to time. And if I recommend and do all my coaching and oscillating, and you're not a big workout guru and you're just looking for basic use, perhaps working with just an oscillating platform is the best bang for your buck. A lot of my seniors, some of my therapists don't want a whole bunch of bells and whistles. They just want basic, you set it and forget it. And oscillating, if you are looking at using a plate long-term, is the best movement. And it is in all of Life Pro's plates. But that, just to give you an idea, sometimes on the different sizes, curved plates tend to be a little more challenging. They challenge the body's alignment, especially in the legs. If you're dealing with medical issues, you have any kind of structural issues, and you're not looking at training for the Olympics anytime soon, my personal preference is a flat surface over the curved. Now, for those of you that are using curved and loving it, please don't beat me up. It is absolutely a preference. But as I coach to the masses, if I'm making a recommendation to anyone dealing with below baseline issues, and will be for some time, go with a flat plate style versus challenging yourself with the curve style. So that's my only other recommendation. Last but not least, and these are more of a recent upgrade, many of the types of features that come in machines have nothing to do with the people making the machines. They come from people like you. I want this on my plate. I really wish it had that. So the hex plate is one model that has the magnet therapeutic bump. I would recommend this style of machine as the best second machine, because I use a machine for athletic training and I prefer to go bare feet. I personally, if I'm going without a mat, I find the bumps for standing exercises, I can only tolerate them for about 2 to 3 minutes before they start bugging my feet. And if you're dealing with neuropathy or sensitivity issues, I don't want any blisters or anything, because you're not adhering to reasonable time frames, and you're going for 20 minutes 4 times a day. These are great as a seated model or a combination of seated and standing. What I would recommend, if you've got a model with the therapeutic bumps, they have their place, but I would use it with a mat. if you are going to be doing standing exercises, just to make the surface a little bit more level. A good thick yoga mat is a great tool, and if your plate comes with one, that may be something to consider if you're using it bare or sock foot like I prefer to. Okay, I need my spectacles. So what else can I show you? I'm going to see what we have for questions. I need my beverage. Okay. So it's impossible to cover this all in 3 seconds or less. I see I've got quite a few of you here. So again, a vibration plate is not black and white. What you do want, it is very driven by what you personally are trying to accomplish as far as goals. Again, it's just an environment. I showed you an example with a pool noodle today for some foot massage, but you can add some weights if you've gotten some other Life Pro tools and accessories. The more that you can combine I'm all about getting it over and done with. I will do massage and feel good stuff on that for a long time. But when it comes to the squats and the push-ups, I'm a busy mom. I homeschool. I'm here to support you guys. I prefer to get my workout done. So I like to make my exercises as challenging for my body type, for me. And I like each exercise to be fatiguing me within about a minute. So the one question I didn't get into a lot of detail, because it's, again, not black and white. How long should you exercise at the gym? Like, it's an impossible question to answer. It really depends on what your goals are, what kind of body you're starting with from, are you dealing with issues, or are you conditioned now? All of these things play a role. And sometimes you're using the machine for feel good and warm up and recovery stuff, and it has nothing to do with the exercise piece. So there are multiple uses for this plate, not only as a self-care tool. Self-care could be a minute or two. You get up in the morning, you got some neuropathy, some swelling, you're on it for a minute or two, you head out the door. Maybe at lunch you're going to be going out and doing some gardening and your back's bugging you. It might be a minute or two as a pre or post garden thing. So again, the more you use your plate and experiment with what I have taught you, the amplitudes, the speeds, mix those things up. I'm very much a creature of habit. I don't really like to learn new moves. So I kind of have my 3, 4, 5 basic moves, and I just change up my settings or my foot position from week to week. If you're using it consistently, you're going to have more experience in experimenting and confidence to move forward and try other things. How often can you use it? If I haven't filled that in, you can use it every single day. It depends what you're using it for. If you are using it for exercise and you are truly pushing yourself to fatigue, you should probably give your body, or those muscle groups a day to recover. But you can do other things. You can work other body parts. You can do some feel good, some stretching, some massage. It's the fitness where you may want to put some time constraints on. And if you're dealing with medical issues and you're a new user, it just feels so good sometimes. But if you're very, very deconditioned and you're just standing for 10 minutes, you might actually be overdoing it, like more than you realize until the next day. So I would prefer that if you're starting out, try 2 to 3 short sessions and build from there, versus just because it's got a preset timer of 10 to 15 minutes. That's not the general recommendation for everybody. But if we only set it for a minute at a time or 5 minutes at a time, everybody would be complaining that it doesn't go long enough. So again, a lot of the programmability and the features in a machine, in today's world with all the choice out there on the consumer side, much of that has been driven by you, the consumer. But the basic principles of using a machine and what to look for are universal, regardless of what plate or model you happen to be using. So I want to know who's got questions for me. What are your challenges? Brenda, can I just stand on it? As I mentioned earlier, if you're still with me, you can just stand on it. But what are the goals? Are you just wanting to get a little bit of energy, get a little bit of lymph going? You would only need a minute or two. And you might find just standing there gets boring. Add some pelvic tilts or some torso twists. You can do other things while you're standing. The more you do, the more benefit you're going to get. And it's going to challenge balance, get some tunes going, maybe dance. There's all kinds of ways you can use the plate. If you are looking at substantial changes to the body, weight gain, weight loss, There's going to be a little bit more structure as far as exercises, but the plate, the beauty of a vibration plate is it makes those types of things attainable. You know, if you're unable to run due to deficiencies like I was with a knee when I got into this, or if you're short on time, or maybe you just don't like to do certain things, a plate can give you all the benefit you need in much less time with much less impact, but you do have to show up personally and be consistent with your use. And that's really where the big success rate comes in, is that consistency piece. Jason said he can't hear me anymore. Now you can. I hope that's good. I've got quite a few of you here. If you are just getting started or you're just joining me, you are only limited by your imagination and your range of motion. I always describe a vibration plate as a tool. It is an environment that you perform exercise positions on, stretches. You can do some direct massage positions. You really are only limited by your imagination and your range of motion. What I want you to focus on is, what are your goals? You know, there's 3 basic goals I started talking about in this session. You're using it to manage symptoms, you know, pain, swelling, or perhaps you're in a recovery situation where you're recovering from surgery or an injury. So that's one of the main reasons people gravitate towards these machines. Using a machine, I find when you're dealing with a medical deficiency or a recent injury surgery, the confidence is different if you have experience using versus do not have experience using. So many of my users that have been using a plate for a period of while, and then they have a surgery, you know, you kind of crave it. You miss the energy and the relief it gave you on some of those chronic things. And you don't realize that until you take a bit of a break. So there are always ways to use the machine with modifications. So perhaps you're reducing the amount of body weight. Maybe you're only exposing certain body parts. There's always a workaround if I can understand a little bit more specifically. Those types of questions, if you're watching this also on the recorded basis, never hesitate to tag me at Debbie with a Y. Sometimes the chitter chatter gets going a little bit crazy. And if you don't tag me specifically, I'd hate to miss your questions. So please be sure to do that. The next group of goals is exercise and fitness. Many of you gravitate towards the plate for those type of marketing slogans, weight loss, you know, easy workout, easy 10-minute workout. But you do have to show up. And those that struggle with exercise or sometimes with the results or what to do on it, there's a direct correlation between your activity levels now and the vibration plate. Just because a machine showed up on your driveway doesn't mean that you're an exercise guru. You've obviously gotten this thing either to facilitate or support things you're doing now, or maybe to get a fresh start. So if you are getting a fresh start and you're not coming from a place of discipline, you don't exercise regularly for purpose, you're not alone. Most people don't go back to the gym February 1st either, but they're really, really busy in January. So if you're not feeling like using it for fitness, or it's just the mental drain of all the workout, at least use it for feel good. And I think what you'll find if you're using it, you know, a minute or two here and you're moving and feeling better, the fitness becomes more possible, especially if you're dealing with chronic issues. And the last little group of goals I was talking about is the vast majority of people who are using it just to feel good and for some relaxation. You know, we all live in a stressful world, whether you are dealing with physical or mental stress. You know what, you tend to have both because one creates the other. So, you know, better mind, better spirit. If the body physically is hurting or the mind, you know, you're going to degress. And if you've done exercise or you've been active throughout the day and you're not getting good sleep because your body's all achy and sore, it kind of defeats the work you've done throughout the day. So for those of you dealing with sleep issues, restless leg, insomnia, you know, sometimes using a plate for a minute or two just before bed to get rid of some of that stuff. So don't be afraid to use your plate throughout the course of your day. You know, a minute or two goes a long way. I have chronic users that use their machine 5-10 times a day, probably when they're having bad days, but it doesn't mean it's a workout. So there is a very, very big difference between just like going for a walk. You know, are you going for a stroll just to help digest after dinner? Or are you going 10K full on up a hill? There's a variation in the intensity and your approach. And a plate is just a tool that makes the exercise, should you choose to do more, a little kinder on the body and a little more effective in less time. So I hope that makes sense. I'm not getting a lot of questions. I hope I did a good job. Hi, Melanie. I just purchased a 4D curved plate. My stability is okay, but sometimes variable due to neurological stuff. I hope it will increase as I use. You will find the curve a little bit more challenging. I talked about that briefly. What I recommend is reducing your foot placement. If you're dealing with neurological issues, and I support so much of that, have a stool like I did in today's session, so you've kind of got, dry land to feel stable on, and just get a feel for it without committing to standing on it yet. Depending on the stability, if it's a vertical thing, do you feel like you're falling this way, that way? The first thing a vibration plate does is improve your balance and stability. So a lot of my therapists will actually put you on a plate for just a minute or two before they do their other stuff, because you become more stable. So for somebody like you, Melanie, before you get into the work it out and the other mid to long-term goals, anytime throughout your day that symptoms present, or maybe you've got to go out and do something and you just want to have a little better footing, get on it for a minute or two. You don't necessarily need to do, like fancy yoga moves and do balance related positions, but a really good tip for your standing poses, if you're comfortable doing that, is closing the eyes and opening them just for a second or two while you're on the machine. It's my favorite way to sort of boost the balance. If that's a little bit scary when you try it, just practice standing on your plate, focus on breathing 30 seconds to a minute, and I guarantee get down on the floor or step off the machine and you'll feel more stable. Other reasons you may want to use it, depending what else is going on neurologically, if there's any sensitivity issues, neuropathy, Raynaud's, any sensation issues, it tends to boost that a little bit as well. So there's other reasons you may want to use it throughout the course of your day to treat symptoms, which is a very common way to use it in my fat disorders group with, swelling and pain management. I hope that helps, Michelle. Linda, great job. Mine comes in tomorrow and I can't wait to start. It's easy to be excited, Linda. So again, start conservatively. I don't care if you use it 5-6 times a day, but keep your times minimal, 2 to 3 minutes max if you are using it for symptom management. If you are looking at using it for fitness, Linda, be realistic with where your starting point is. If you're getting off the couch for the first time in 20 years, please don't go the full time, reduce the feet and get the speed up to a smoother level in that mid-range. And there's a bazillion videos that Life Pro has done. If there's something specific, don't ever be afraid to use the search function. If you guys are looking for something specifically from me, if you're looking for something specific, maybe you're looking for Crohn's and colitis, or maybe you're looking for diabetes. I try to put lots of awareness and words so that you can find these sessions, because we've got 2 to 3 a week going for you guys. Is there a limit to how many times per day? Jason, it depends on what you are using it for. I don't like to say that there is a limit, but I don't want you using it for like half hour every hour, if that makes sense. If you're using it to manage symptoms, as I said, a lot of my clients are using it multiple times a day, but in short durations. From a fitness perspective, Jason, sometimes I break it into a couple of workouts. So maybe I'm doing legs in the morning and I'm doing arms at night, or maybe I'm doing some stretching and recovery. What I don't want you doing is overdoing it. And it's easy to do if you're a new user. You absolutely can use your machine multiple times a day. I can't give you a number, just like going to the doctor. How long can I walk for tonight? He's not going to have a number. How fast are you walking? Are you walking up a hill? There's all these variables. So it depends what you're doing on it, Jason. If you're working out and you think working out more is going to get you to the goals, no, you're going to over-exercise yourself if you truly are pushing yourself. But for feel good, stress relief, that kind of stuff, use as your body tells you it needs to. Just keep those times minimal, 3 to 5 minutes max, especially for the feel good stuff. I hope that makes sense. Exercise for fat disorders. Been having leg and hip pain for a week. Been using it sitting while working and standing, but hasn't helped much. Do you have a fat disorder? I should clarify, because I get beat up for using that term all the time. Maybe you have a fat disorder and you don't know. I call them fat disorders because until you know what they're called, you tend to call them fat disorders. I'm talking about lymphedema, lipedema, Derkham's disease, where the body's lymph system just ain't working the way that it should. And it's very common to have swelling, enlarged arms, legs, both lumps and bumps. You tend to be dealing with pain, fatigue, those types of things. And 1 in 9 women are dealing with one of these disorders, men too. It's just as common as diabetes, and most people have never heard of it. But I do have I also have a large support group for special needs, primarily dealing with pediatric cerebral palsy. So lots of folks using the machines that you never thought of. Again, back to the earlier part of my session, contraindications, who can use a machine, and it really is driven by the person supporting you. LifePro is an equipment provider, a very, very diverse one that brings all kinds of amazing equipment to the market, but they're not a medical company. You can't just give them your billing code. They don't have a team of doctors behind the scenes helping you with your care. That's your doctor's job. These are tools. And I think you would find the same with most medical equipment supply companies. They're going to defer you to your doctor for protocols and things like that. The reason that LifePro does sessions with folks like myself, Amber, and Roseanne is to address all these different colors of the rainbow with the symptoms that you guys are dealing with. So Brenda, if you do have lipedema, I hope that you're in my group. If you are, then you're used to my ramblings, and I'm getting on to almost an hour here. So I hope I've offered some insight. Jason is using it for neuropathy. You've had it for 15 years. Okay, Jason, you can collect $200. And that was kind of what I was looking for. If you're dealing with neuropathy, man, get your feet on that whenever they get worse. If you didn't see my pull noodle trick, this is a great tool to use, just rolling the feet on it. I use a foam roller because a traditional roller is a little too dense, and this is just a good way to get into the ankles. But yeah, get up under the toes, get some movement going on your feet. Depending on the model that you're using, a lot of people like using pulsation just as a spot treatment for neuropathy. But the biggest thing that I recommend with neuropathy, especially if it's chronic, Jason, is mixing up your settings. Don't do it on the same speed. So if it, play with your foot position, play with your settings, confuse the muscles and the nerves in your feet. And if you do start feeling that pins and needles, itchiness, heat, pain, these are all good things because sensitivity and all those messages are starting to communicate more effectively. But it's easy to overdo it. So if it's severe, Jason, and you're not feeling things, don't overdo it. I don't want you developing blisters or sores on your feet because you've been bounced around without realizing it. Keep the feet functional, about hip width apart. And if you haven't tried leaning over, putting those elbows on, it gets more weight into the feet, or put some weights on your lap. Put your grandkid on your lap. Get a little more weight into those feet and drill them into the plate. And I think you'll find a little bit more success. And if you're not able to stand, do what you can to start. Progressing to full body exercises is not only going to help the neuropathy improve, it's going to get more body weight into it, but it's going to keep the bones and the muscles and all that other stuff going. So even if you can only stand for like 30 seconds to a minute and you have to hang on to something, progress if you are if you are able. That would be my hope for you. How do I get into your group? I have to give you an invitation, or you have to look me up. So I will look up the link now and drop that to you. And there are some questions that you'll need to answer. And I'm sorry for I'm going to give everybody about 1 or 2 more minutes. If you do have questions, I am here to answer those for you. And I may do a follow-up next week because I tend to have lots of questions after the fact. How do I do this? Or I missed your session last week and wanted to ask you this question. So I did put it down here. Okay, there's the link to my Fat Disorders group, Facebook user. What if you have fused spine? Can you use the trim light? I do work with a lot. So many different spine issues, and a lot of them are fused. It really depends where, why, what you're able to do. So it's not so much the fused spine, it's what your current level of health is. Now the trim light is a smaller plate. The handle is good, sort of give you fingertip stability, but if you're very unstable, start in a stool like I did in today's session. And just get a feel for it. I recommend, if you're dealing with spinal issues, reduce the distance between the feet. It's kind of a double-edged sword. You absolutely should double check with your doctor. I don't know how recent the fusion is, if you've had any complications, if it's a recent thing. But generally speaking, if you're immobile, you spend a lot more time sitting. So it's nice to use the plate seated just to give the legs some attention. But standing, wherever the area of fusion is, all those little muscles around it have been doing like all the extra work, picking up all the slack. So it's usually not the fused spine, it's how your body compensates for it. So you probably got hip issues and knee issues, maybe neck and shoulder, and those are what need the attention. So the spine itself, again, less impact than walking. If you have specific questions, feel free to ask me more, or if your doctor does. But I put little kids on these machines 2 months post spinal surgery with a good team at St. Louis Children's. So again, a lot of that boils down to experience, which you are personally lacking right now because you haven't used the plate a lot. So start seated, put your feet close together, crank it up to like a mid to high speed range with your trim light. It's going to go like 99 speeds. So be in the 50 to 60 range. The really slow, choppy speeds are jarring, even though instinctively we think we should start slow. Slow on a vibration machine should be called conservative. Closer feet or hands and a faster speed. And maybe check back with me on that and let me know how you make out. But I think you'll find it's a matter of understanding where to put the feet, and you're moving 2 to 3 millimeters each time. It's less impact. And the big thing with spinal issues is we tend to want to guard and protect and fight the vibration. Just relax, make sure the knees are bent, and just sort of be aware and pay attention to where you're feeling it. If you search back and spine or Debbie spine, I did a session this summer specifically to that because there's some awesome exercises you can do from a standing position until range of motion allows, if you want to get down on the ground and do other things. But there's lots of options you have with fusions. If it's recent, that would be, I want to make sure you're past recovery. That would be my big concern. Okay, my son had his whole spine done back in 2007. So are we talking individual fusions, or are we talking, this is old school, but something more like a Harrington's rod? I have worked with that, and depending, it's about the range in the pelvis. So if you're fused in this range and you don't have the ability to move your pelvis, it gets very hard to do squats or go deeper into your standing poses without having something to hang on to. So yes, it doesn't matter how many have been, unless he's been, told that he can't ever move and exercise. I don't see any reason, as long as he's, 2017 is 5 years ago. But again, start him seated. And what I will say, if it's for your son, if he's littler bodies, it feels different. There's less mass to absorb. So the itchiness, the pins and needles, especially around the spine. So when you have fusions or surgery or replacements, there's a lot of nerves that are cut and sewn back. There's all kinds of trauma to those areas. And sometimes the pins and needles or the itchiness is the worst part for the kids to get past if you don't tell them about it. So it's not uncommon. He might feel like a pins and needles or a tingling in that area, just as the circulation, the neural pathways start communicating more effectively. So that's not uncommon. See it all the time. No, it looks like a scaffold and he has tight hamstrings. Number one issue every kid with CP has is tight hamstrings. And I would recommend seated with a pull noodle. You got to work on that range of motion and tightening. So many parents spend hours every night massaging those down hamstrings, when a minute or two on your machine will remedy that. So the first thing, because the heels aren't going flat, right? I'm getting off on a tangent here, but put the balls of the feet on the pull noodle and force a calf stretch and stand up if he's able. This is a great way to stretch the calves. Bend the knees slightly to stretch that smaller calf muscle down by the Achilles. But this is a great way, maybe he's hanging on to the back of a chair, but stretch those calves and those hamstrings. If range of motion allows, I don't know how little your son is, but you can sit directly on the plate. So us ladies do this for like cellulite and toning the thighs. But if you're dealing with cerebral palsy and tight hamstrings, you can just sit on it. So you put the hamstring flat on the plate. You want the legs out straight in front of you. And you could reach for your toes, do your stretching. But just by getting that stimulation into the hamstrings, it's probably the number one issue I show my families in my cerebral palsy group is the spasticity in the hamstrings. And then any other exercises that you're doing now, if there's something specific that your therapist or whatever care provider you might be working with for support, if you have exercises you're supposed to be doing right now, but aren't really doing them regularly, I know that life sometimes gets in the way. And the number one reason I love recommending plates to my special needs families is it's about more family time and less therapy time. The last thing I want is, after 3-4 hours of intensive, you coming home and doing another half an hour to an hour on your plate. Use it to increase the effectiveness of the exercises you're supposed to be doing on the floor now. The advantage with the plate from some of the direct massage applications, when you're dealing with littler bodies, you can physically pick them up and put them down. Whereas if it's my 98-year-old grandma with range of motion issues, I may not want to start with sitting her on the plate. Kids are very, very resilient. I've never met a kid that did not like using a machine. They like to make funny voice sounds. And the biggest thing with kids is just getting them used to how it feels. I don't care what study said to use this frequency or that amplitude. You know what? Most of the therapists out there that are applying the high energy medical devices, sorry if I'm offending those of you that are doing this, but don't start them at the highest intensity as outlined in the study. Little bodies need time to get used to the machine. Why is it itching me? Why, if they're constipated, they're going to be pooping for a week straight. There's all kinds of restorative things that your body goes through. But with my littler bodies, my petite users, my littler kids, they can't take those high frequencies or the high speeds. It's just too much action for them starting out. So just like you, feet hip width apart, depending on the size of the user, and start at a mid speed on your plate. Get them used to how it feels. Play catch with them on it. Throw a ball back and forth. Let them sit on it while they're playing their Nintendo. Oh, whatever the common news, the Wii, that would be the new one. No, the Wii, whatever. Anyways, I'm a little bit dated on my handheld technology, but once a kid understands a plate and how to use it, they'll be finding the power plug and using it on their own. And they're just littler versions of us. Of course, it's okay for kids to use a plate. That's going to take me off into another whole tangent, which I've also done sessions on. But is it okay for kids to be active? Of course it is. Do kids have growing pains and therapeutic needs just like we do? Of course they do. They're just smaller bodies, so we make different modifications for their size and the deficiencies that they're dealing with. There's no one that can't use a plate with experienced guidance. Oh, he's 22. Okay, so he's not little itty bitty, but as a man, it's the itchiness. Most guys, they're more sensitive. They have a lower body fat, so they tend to feel that itchiness. But any toe touches, anything he's doing for his hamstrings now, and especially if he spends too much time seated, whether that's due to his condition or maybe it's due to his work, being seated for long periods and not getting up and getting some things moving, it digresses and tightens those hamstrings up. A lot of my users will do a little bit in the mornings before they go, a little bit when they get home, just to get rid of some of the symptoms of the day. But before you go to bed, or if you're planning on doing some hamstring specific exercises, just sitting down on it for a minute or two or doing some standing stretches if he's stable is a great way to use the plate. Do they sell a longer power cord for the trim light? I don't believe so, but they're universal. You can go on to Amazon and get yourself a 10-footer if you want. They're not terribly expensive. I find lots of mine at the secondhand store. I got 2 bins just full of cords because back in my trade show days, I was always losing them or lending them to other people, and then I'd never get them back. So the secondhand store is a good place. But if you just look for standard, I think it's machine power cord or electrical appliance cord, you should be able to find what you're looking for on Amazon. Probably more inexpensive than if Life Pro produced them and sold them to you. That would be my suggestion. I've got all kinds. I've got ones that are as long as 10, 15 feet. And like I say, some of them I've purchased. They're expensive if you go into like an electronics store, but I think you'll find that they're fairly reasonable with shipping on Amazon. I hope that makes sense. Any other questions? You guys have been awesome today. Thank you for the turnout. There must be lots of new users, and you're all on your plates right now, incorporating all the tips that I've given you. Well, I'm going to leave it at that for today. If there are no more questions, again, if you're just getting started, do some self-discovery. What are the goals first? What you do on the plate directly correlates to the benefits you're going to receive, and consistent use is the key. It's not always a big workout. As I said, you can use it for symptom management, you can use it for feel good, and for fitness. And the sooner you start playing around with your machine, the sooner you're going to figure that out for yourself. If you're watching this on a recorded basis and you do have questions specifically for me, just a reminder, tag me at Debbie with a Y. If I've rambled you to death and your head is spinning and you think of something after, feel free to post me a question and I will answer that within the next day or so for you as well. Thanks everyone for joining me. Quick reminder that there is a review contest going on with Life Pro. I will drop some details in the links for you. There's prizes to be drawn. Amber announces those Fridays in her live. So I'll get some details posted up on that for you. It is also, there's still some pretty good deals for those of you that are looking for a vibration plate. Maybe you've kind of been on the fence. Maybe you're looking at something to go with your vibration plate. Maybe you need a gun. Maybe you need some weights. You're ready to pick things up. So if you're looking, I'm going to do my link. There is still up to 50% off select items and 20% off on a lot of items as well. A lot of you are jumping on the bandwagon. And if there's things that you've been considering and they're 20 or 50% off, please don't expect them to be in stock. And when they do come back in stock, they're probably not going to be 50 to 20% off. So if there's something you've been considering and it's on sale now, I would suggest it's only while inventory lasts. So don't wait and expect the world changes quickly, and the next order coming in may not be as good a deal. So if you, especially the 50% off guys, if you're looking at some of the sauna blankets or the compressions, some of the other things I've talked about, now is the time. Self-care, time to be aware and prioritize yourself in 2024. That's what I talked about earlier last week. I look forward to seeing you guys next Monday. Don't work too hard. Same time, same place. Yes, they did have some great deals over the holidays. So take a look if you haven't already. Thank you for those of you that joined me today. Get started. The only person in your way is you. And you don't have to be great. You don't have to have a big protocol out there. Just start moving and feeling better. And the sooner you start playing with your machine, the more you're going to understand how to be effective with it. Thank you for joining me, guys. Have a great rest of the week. It's going to be a long one after all these holidays we've had here the last couple. Enjoy your week. Thanks for joining me.